I would love to share with our listeners the story of how you became who you are today, how you became her, the goddess of
Mhm.
light that you are today. How did your journey begin? What was your call to adventure?
Oh, I love that. My call to adventure. Well, I didn't know that it was going to be an adventure when I got the call. What happened, where I'm at in my life right now. There's been several different pieces of the story that have really led me here, but I think the most impactful piece of recent is what transpired in about 2009. As I was going through healing, I had had much trauma from my childhood. Lots of different experiences in my early 20s that had brought me to a not very healthy place in my life. And so I started to transform those pieces and started to try to get healthier in my body, healthier in my mind. And in 2009, it was like everything started to fall apart. It was what I call the big breakthrough, or the big breakdown before the breakthrough. And so I went into this experience where I lost my home, my partner, and my job all within about a 6-month time period,
Oh,
and
wow.
ended up, yeah, I ended up homeless. I ended up, and I was too proud at that point and too much of a perfectionist to share with people what was really going on. So I hadn't gotten to a place of healing where I was able to be vulnerable and open. And so I would live in my car sometimes. I would stay at people's places and not really explain what was going on. And kind of it left this whole perfectionist, view to the world. Like everybody's like, oh, Melissa's life is so great. I was a competitor. I had all these things going on. And if you knew what was going on behind that, you would have been like, oh my God, I was melting on the inside and things were just falling apart. And I had but was dealing with former eating disorders and drug issues in my body. So my body was at this place of like complete and utter shutdown. From even though I was trying to get healthy, I had just taken one extreme of eating disorders and drugs and turned it into a healthy extreme at the other end, or healthy so-called. And so all of these things started crumbling at the same time. My health was going. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. All of these crazy things were happening. And I just kind of like dropped to my knees and I was like, what's the answer here? Like, what am I missing? And I didn't realize until recently that one of the like everybody talks about that moment, that quietness, that peace that happens to them, that happened for me in 2009. And I didn't even realize that that's what it was until probably about 6 months ago. I had a friend by the name of Raina who, in the distraughtness of everything that was happening when I had found out that my partner at the time was sleeping with someone else, we'd just broken up, all these things. She came and picked me up from a night of excessive drinking and took me to her house. And I woke up the next morning and I had this like level peace. Like I went from being distraught and like mind blown and like crying to 2 days of absolute just nothingness, like this absolute nothingness. And at the time, I asked her, I was like, what the hell did you do to me? She's like, oh, I just did some work on you. And she was my first spiritual guide. She was the one that taught me and really got me into things. She's like, I just did some work on you to kind of bring you, take you out of that space. And I was like, oh. And I literally sat around for a couple of days, just kind of like, like nothing going on. And then of course, all of the shit comes back and you get onto life and all these crazy things happen. And then I started in on this journey of spending the next 7 years of healing and transforming my life and really working on loving my body and going to school to learn. That's when I started at IIN. And I like just different, like the synchronicity of the universe. The universe just started throwing things in my path. And at that time, I didn't know what coincidences were. The universe, like none of that stuff did I understand what was happening. And it just started like lining up in front of me and having all of these things happen. And so as I started healing, I first went to healing my body physically first, and that's why I went to IIN. And I started health coaching and doing holistic hormone therapy and really helping people on the health conscious side. But as I started getting healthy in my body, I didn't like what I saw in the mirror because I had spent years being really thin and fit looking, even if it wasn't healthy. And realized that I had been judging myself so much on my outer appearance and found out it was really connected to my inner soul and not dealing with the trauma of my rape and my molestation from my childhood. Had never dealt with it. It just stuffed it down underneath all this perfectionism and all of these things. So I really started working on those pieces, and I started doing really deep spiritual work and taking all these transformational courses and programs and learning how to use this work with my clients, and started working with clients. All clients started coming to me that all had sexual trauma. They all had sexual trauma, so I had to try techniques and use all these things with them. They were coming for health reasons, right? Health reasons, but it was underlying all of it. I would start getting intuitive messages from my guides, and like hits that I would be like, oh, this woman had sexual trauma in her life, and then sure enough, sessions later, she would say how she'd been molested for 13 years by her father, or like all of these things started coming up, and so I started using these techniques that were being given to me through Source and through the techniques that I learned, and started using them with my clients, and just really realized that it was just so powerful with all of those things, and I began to heal more, and they began to heal more, and I kept moving forward in that process. And then I got to a point where I was doing my own conferences, I was doing my own events, I was doing all this stuff, and really realized that although I was helping, all these different women, that what I really wanted to do was help the other layer, the conscious entrepreneurs and the speakers and the coaches that were going out helping these others. And I wanted to teach them my processes. I wanted to teach them how to do the work I was doing from stage. I wanted to teach them how to create all this healing so that they could go out, and that's how I get to the 1 billion people, right? Is I teach a layer and they go out and teach everyone else. So that's like the simple version of like where I got to today, and how I work with and help entrepreneurs and women all over the world, and still own a piece of that, which is going to work with human trafficking and giving back to organizations and teaching the processes and using them in different countries all over the world to really support the other level too.
Wow, Melissa, there's so much in what you just shared, so much that I want to unpack. And thank you for being so candid and open. And of course, sexual trauma is so prevalent, and it's not talked about as much as it needs to be talked about, let alone the action that needs to be taken is not taken. It's my belief, based on experience, that there is no woman, I mean, men, of course, suffer from sexual trauma as well, but I think for women especially, there's no woman that has never had sexual trauma of some kind. She may not think of it as sexual trauma. She may think, well, I've never been raped. But have you ever received unwanted sexual attention?
Yeah.
Have you ever been looked at in a way that made your skin crawl? Have you ever been made to feel unsafe because of what you were wearing or where you were? That is all traumatic as well. I mean, there are degrees of sexual trauma, of course. There's a wide spectrum. But would you agree that those things also affect women not feeling safe in their bodies, not feeling safe to wear what they want to wear, to go where they want to go at any hour of the day or night? Would you think that affects women's self-expression?
Absolutely. And not only and just as for a point to that, look at the 5 million women that just marched. Of course it's affecting all sorts of women. It's affecting the world over, because we have been silenced for centuries about our humanness and who we are and the goddesses that are in us. And we were the mothers and the takers of the earth, and we've been silenced. So yes, even if it's not a sexual trauma in that way, it is still a trauma for centuries that we are all dealing with as women. And it shows up generationally. So even if it's not you physically in this lifetime, it's showing up through the generations passed down to you from your parents, and the way that they teach you to behave, to believe the things that you should be doing, the way that you're supposed to back in the 50s, it was get married, right, and have kids, and now it's go, where's your empowerment to what are you supposed to be doing next, and being quiet, and what women should do this or that, and the cultures all over the world, women have been suppressed for so long that even if you don't think you've had any kind of sexual trauma, the trauma exists in your DNA from lifetimes now. And absolutely, this is something that we all have to break free of if we're going to change the consciousness of this world, if we're going to raise the vibration, if we're going to heal the wounds of the past and bring the goddess back and bring back the matriarchal society that we are here to experience.
Yeah. I so appreciate what you're saying about trauma that exists in women from generations before, and it kind of gives a different meaning to the words sexual trauma, because as a sex, we are all traumatized by centuries and centuries and centuries of oppression, and our voices being shut down, and our bodies being shut down, our bodies being told that, we're not okay. You brought this up too in terms of the body image. There's been such a war on the female body going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. We were sanctioned from showing skin. We were sanctioned from, wearing certain kinds of clothes. And still, I mean, it continues. Still, we're pretty fortunate living in the United States of America, where we enjoy a lot of freedoms that women around the world don't. But still, the war continues in different ways. How we are made to compare and despair, look at our body, compare it with other bodies. We're always being compared to all this body shaming.
Yeah.
Do you, well, you've experienced this in yourself. Can you talk a little more of how you transformed your relationship with your body, where you were, and what was your journey of
Yeah.
becoming friends and lovers with your body as opposed to being at war with yourself?